All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the open work session meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. For those that wish to, we'd like to stand for the Lord's Prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Our schedule today is 2 open work sessions, one for the review of chapters 1 through 6 from the Wicomico County Personnel Manual, and a work session on the SWOT analysis, the EMS Task Force report. So we'll start with the Personnel Manual, chapters 1 through 6. Mrs. O'Hara? I think we're going to review chapters 1 through 3 and then new discussion on 4 through 6. Is that right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Donna O'Hara, Director of Human Resources. Yes, Laura had said that it would be a good review since it's been such a long time to kind of just get back through 1 through 3. I provided a copy of what we had talked about 1 through 3 and sent that over. So I guess if there are any questions about the changes that I made, I think I covered everything, but we can kind of go through and look. She also sent me a copy of the minutes, so if there's any questions about 1 through 3 that you would like to discuss, please let me know.
Any questions on sections 1 through 3? Mr. Benson?
Section 106.
106, okay.
In the charter, there's a list of exempt positions. And the list of exempt positions in the charter differ from the list that's in the personnel manual.
Okay. I don't have the full charter in front of me. Do you want to?
Well, you've added Wicomico nursing home employees, Wicomico free library employees, among others. For the benefit of the council, I just thought maybe you could explain why
Sure.
It has a different list than what's in the charter.
So I added those, and I don't know, I wasn't sure what to do because they do not follow our personnel manual. They fall under their own. The only thing that we do for them is provide their benefits. So we don't hold them to what we do for the rest of the county. They're under their own. So I can either leave them out and let it be as it was, but I noted that it wasn't brought up, so I wasn't sure what to do with it, to be honest with you. So if we're dealing with the charter and a difference there, then I guess I should probably take those out.
Yeah, and I think in the charter, it says exempted positions include the heads of departments and the council administrator and assistant council administrator, but they're not in your list in the personnel manual.
Okay.
Mr. Benson, if we were to proceed with this, would it require a charter amendment?
I don't know that you have to have it consistent. I'm just saying that there's a list that's in the charter that's at variance with what's in the personnel manual. I just want to make sure the council understands that there's a distinction between the two so you can decide whether you want them to be consistent.
Right.
Thank you.
Understood.
And just for clarification, the charter would supersede the personnel manual.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Hurley.
In section 107 and 108, which is the state's attorney's office and circuit court, I guess I got the same question, and that is, has that language been submitted to both those offices for their review and approval?
Yes, I did that over a year ago, approximately a year ago. Everybody had the entire manual sent to them multiple times, and I had a lot of feedback, a lot of interaction. The state's attorney got back to me, and then I did, there were questions about the years of service and the eligibility, and there was a resolution for the state's attorney's office, which was Resolution 122-2007, that covered what is in the manual that I put there, so I was able to follow up with that. I haven't had any more feedback from the state's attorney that she wanted anything else changed on that, so.
You've added a Section 110 departmental standard operating procedures. Actually, yeah, 110, I'm sorry, administrative procedures. Says the Director of Department of Human Resources shall establish internal procedures necessary to effect provisions, but not restrict or broaden the provisions of the personnel manual. Should those be reviewed by the county council?
Sure, I can put that in there.
Can we back up to section 109?
Sure.
Mr. Vice President?
Thank you.
Yes.
So I know that we talked about before at our last work session, making the distinction between the executive and legislative branches of government, and you've done that. But you also mentioned that the county council would have the responsibility for the annual performance evaluation, disciplinary actions, and grievance procedures for the legislative branch staff members. Right now, the county council pretty much does the performance evaluations and the disciplinary actions, but we don't have any role in the grievance procedures.
Okay.
So this would be something new that would be added.
Okay.
Can you give me some guidance on, what that entails?
I can, or, it can go either way. I assume that probably would be the preference for it to be spelled out that way. But the initial, we could go through the grievance process. It's chapter 23 in the old manual, but I could go through that process and work through like the other departments that we work with for the grievance process. If you want to do it that way, if you would rather that stay the way that it was, where it goes through the regular process through county HR, through us, that's fine too. But where you're two separate branches, I wasn't, and they do your performance evaluations and everything. I made the assumption that possibly the primary grievance process would start with your branch, and then if it wasn't resolved at that point, it would probably go to the next level, but.
Perhaps we can look at that
Sure.
chapter when we get to it, and then we
Okay.
can revisit that section.
Sure. Okay.
Else have anything on chapter 1? Moving on to chapter 2, organization and delegation of authority.
Any questions?
I don't have anything.
I have a couple, I have questions, but
Okay, Mr. Benson, go ahead.
205,
Okay.
in the current version, it says that the county council shall delegate authority to department heads. This says that department heads have responsibility, so the county council no longer is involved in that. I'm not saying there's a problem with it. I just want council to understand that that's been changed.
That's because it was written under county council form of government, and then now it's a county executive form of government. That's why that changed. But I don't know if there's anything you want to add to it, but.
Section 207. Can you explain to the council why not all personnel system transactions would be processed in Munis?
Time clock is married to Munis, but it isn't Munis itself, and that's the timekeeping system. So as far as human resources information system, as much as the data for HR can be, it's in there, but there are other systems that marry into it and communicate with it. And like Civic Plus for our website, for applications, it also marries into it. So it all hubs in there, but there are other pieces that come through the system.
Just to make sure council understands that most, but not all, personnel matters will be in Munis.
Mr. Vice President, just again for clarification, I know that Time Clock actually imports the data into the Munis system, if that helps.
Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure about Civic Plus, but I know Time Clock does.
Our applicant tracking comes through there, yeah.
Any other questions on section 2? Moving on to section 3, chapter 3, position classification. Questions?
For the council's benefit, chapter 3 is what is currently chapter 4 in the current version. So if you're looking at it,
Correct.
section 307, D2, Roman numeral 2. Currently, if a reclassification of position is to be made, it has to be approved by the county council. This change would say that that will be approved by Director of Human Resources without county council being involved.
Hold on here. 307
D2.
D2. Oh, sorry,
D2.
excuse me.
Yep.
Roman numeral 2.
I says, if approved, the request shall then be presented to county council for final approval.
Director of Human Resources does not support the reclassification request, it may be denied fully. A recommendation may be made to modify the request where needed for submission and approval. So if I read it correctly, you have the authority to deny it. And if you deny it, it does not come to county council.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I see what you're saying. And
I don't know if that's an issue. I just want council to understand that's a change from the current personnel manual. Section 308D, it's the same thing. It currently has to go to county council, but as written, the Director of Human Resources, if they deny it, it does not come to county council.
And I think these changes were made because there were several versions as it went from county council to county executive form of government that I inherited that were modified along the way, trying to get passed. At that point, some of that did change where it's under the executive branch, most of the personnel stuff now, and that's why those changes were made. So that's what those versions that I inherited, so.
And I just want council to be aware that that's a change. Section 310, acting capacity. Just so you know, that is currently Chapter 13. So basically, Chapter 13 has been merged into what is now Chapter 3. That's just an informational for the council. It's not a comment. Under 310D3, there's new language that says if the position is a key position and normal recruitment procedures have not been successful after 120 days, the Director of Administration may approve additional time in increments of 30, 60, 90, and 120 days not to exceed 1 year. I think currently, if it goes beyond 120 days, it has to come to the county council.
Okay. And again, that was a change that was made along the way too.
Just want
because of
council
that.
to understand
Yeah.
that that's changed. So
Yeah.
currently now, under the new language, the county council will have no say if it extended beyond 120 days under this paragraph. I don't have anything else in Chapter 3.
But today's just a work session. we're not approving anything today.
I understand that. I'm just trying to make sure you all understand that there are changes in here that may or may not be a problem from the council's point of view. But the current language says county council has to approve it. The new language generally says that county council doesn't have to approve it. And I just want the county council to understand that.
So it says not to exceed 1 year. So if it's 120 days and it's extended multiple times, in total, it can't go past a year. So past that year, it will have to come back to us, right?
To continue recruiting for it.
Okay. So we'll eventually have to come back.
I think the distinction is now, if it goes beyond 120 days, it would have to come back.
Okay.
In this scenario, it would have to come back after a year.
So it's adding like 200 days or 220 days or 40
I've
days.
done the math, but
Yeah.
365 less 120.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's 245, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
It's close. Yeah.
I don't have anything else in chapter 3 unless somebody else has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. Anybody else have anything, chapter 3? No? All right,
It's a big deal.
on to chapter 4, recruitment and selection.
Yes, and before we get rolling on that, I did want to share that I spoke with Sheriff Lewis this afternoon. He had gotten an email, I guess, with some red line version and a question about Section 402. So I do have an email from him and copies, so that if that gets brought up, you have it in front of you. Let me just keep one for myself. I'll pass these around, just in case it comes up. Okay, I'm ready.
Mr. President, just so, Section 402 is new language. It involves the sheriff's department. I called the sheriff yesterday just to ask if he was familiar with it. My understanding was he had not seen it. I haven't gotten the email, so you all have the email.
It's coming
That was
around
the
too.
point. It was just to make sure that the change that involves the sheriff's office had been seen by the sheriff.
And to clarify, the entire manual was sent multiple times to all department heads, including the sheriff and his command staff, and reviewed, and open invitations to meet with me throughout all last year. So,
So I guess the question I would have on section 402 is what is the goal of that?
the goal would be to make sure that they are in compliance with any changes that take place with their federal, local law enforcement laws and corrections laws for Comar and all of those things, and that there's accountability there to make sure that if they make any changes, that they are in compliance with those mandates that they're held accountable for, and that we're in the loop if they were to change anything that would affect that. And you're welcome to call him back. Again, he looked it over. We talked on the phone. I sent him over the new language, and he looked it over and approved of it. It was a little, it's one of those pieces or parts that I inherited that was kind of in the middle of changing, and I kept it as it was. I agree that the language was a little off, but when I sent it out, it was a little confusing, but when I sent it out, they didn't make any corrections to it, so I left it as is, thinking that they were happy with it, so.
Did I hear you say he did approve it?
Yes, he just approved it this
The
afternoon.
language has been revised.
If you look at the bottom, it says current wording, which is the way it is as you see it on the form, and then I reworded it, and he approved it, so that would, what it is on the changed version would go where 402 is right now, according to his email. If you'd like, I can read it out loud if you would like, but.
Please.
Okay, so it would change from the way it reads now to the hiring processes for law enforcement and correctional officers, as well as any changes, shall follow established departmental policies. The county attorney, the Department of Human Resources, and the Director of Administration shall be informed of established policies and any modifications to these policies as needed.
So he would just have to notify, he wouldn't have to,
Have it approved? No, because the only person that he answers to is
him.
And Comar, the regulations of the law, so. And same thing with corrections. They have their own special set of recruiting policies and laws that they have to follow, so.
So this is to make sure they're compliant with all federal and Comar regulations. Has there been an instance where they have not been?
No, it just covers us to make sure that on our side that we've established the fact that they need to make sure that they're in compliance.
Okay, thank you. Josh?
In 411, the formerly 611 nepotism, I think on the council members, that's the page 28, I think. 24-ish. 24, there we go. So what is, I guess, what changes have been made here that is noteworthy, and how are we clear that, I'm assuming we are making changes because we want to prevent against further nepotism, but the county has a pretty long history of hiring folks that has been slightly quasi-unethical in certain ways. So the more that we can be stricter than this, I guess, the better.
Right.
Can you go over that?
Well, that's why I made it its own chapter in Chapter 7. So that'll be in the next group. I mean, I didn't bring it with me, but it's its own chapter now, to be very specific about it, to be honest, so that we can be more careful about
So
it.
what is now section 411 is going to go back to be its own chapter again?
It's, right, as you, did you get the summary page? Because 0411, formerly 611, is now its own chapter 7.
Because it was its own chapter before.
And then it got stuck in a little place somewhere along the way. It was formerly 611. And I made its own chapter.
Do you recall what changes are made there?
I don't have that with
I looked at
me.
the language, I don't think it's significantly different. It's
I haven't sent you-
substantially similar to what was in the current personnel manual.
I haven't sent you Chapter 7 yet, so you probably don't have it.
Well, let me put it this way. What is in 411 is substantially similar to what is currently in the personnel manual. If there's changes, obviously, we haven't seen it.
Okay.
Would we need this in this chapter if we have a whole?
That's why, what happened with this manual, the current personnel manual, is it talks about the same subject in 4 or 5 different places. And when you're bouncing back and forth, especially if you're an employee or your new supervisor, you may think you have all the information you need to decide what to do on a particular issue, and you may have missed something that's in another section. So my goal was to get everything about a particular topic in the same place so that you had everything right there. And that's why things have kind of changed as far as the numbers and everything. And that's why I did the summary of it, so that you kind of know where it was before, where it is now, and what the main changes are. So,
Okay.
and I can certainly send that to you ahead of time, but it's in the next section. 7 and 8 would be.
Do that at another meeting.
Yes. Yep, it'll be the next one. Yep.
Just, I guess I should have done this before, just so the people here and the public's aware. When was the last time this was done?
So it was written originally in 2003, and the only thing that's been done is in 2010. Some of the amendments and legislation were stuck in there. So it's
so
a 20.
To say that you have a monumental task is an understatement. Is that
I have a few
pretty
gray
correct?
areas I've had to cover up.
Okay. Well, thank you for dealing with a
Sure. It's important.
decades-old document.
And in the long run, it will make everybody's life a lot easier from a management perspective, HR perspective, everybody's perspective, your perspective, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Talk about nepotism. I thank you for bringing that up, because I was thinking the same thing. How, and I don't know because I'm not a personnel person, how can you prevent, because I have complaints calling me that you hire your friends in positions they may not be qualified for? How can it be addressed? Because some people call me and say so-and-so's not qualified, but she's a friend of somebody. How can you prevent that?
Well, from a nepotism, it's usually, on the application form, you have to disclose if you're related to anybody. So
Not a
the primary.
relationship,
Right.
but I'm talking about a personal friendship.
You can't always prevent that, but from a merit position where HR is involved and the department heads are involved in recruiting and interviewing and vetting people through the process of hiring, we do our best to hire the best qualified candidates. Now, if a best qualified candidate also happens to be a friend, I mean, it's very hard in a small community like this for us not to know or have a friendship with somebody in some department somewhere, but I have things like that happen. I don't know, I can't say that anybody anywhere could completely prevent that from happening when somebody doesn't disclose that they're a friend, or you don't know it, depending on your position, but again, that's a tough one as far as friendships, related, blood related, that's a little different.
It looks like the classifications are pretty clearly defined here in section C. And as far as friendships goes, there's not much we can do about that. As long as we're focusing on, are they qualified for the job or not?
Right.
Right?
Right,
That's what should really make the difference.
right.
Anything else on chapter 4?
In what is now section 609, which is under reinstatements, which is 409 in the new one. In the current version, there's a veterans and reemployment rights section that is not included in the new proposed personnel manual. Is there a reason why that got removed?
Veterans reinstatement, let me look for 609.
Current language says that under the Veterans Reemployment Rights Statute, veterans who leave, go into the service, paraphrasing, have a right to their job when they come back out.
There's a whole military service section that is later on as well. Yes, I can't quote it off the top of my head where it is right now, but I'll make a note of it to make sure that I point that out.
I don't think it's in the first 6 chapters.
No, it's
No.
not.
All right, so that
I'll make a note
section's
of it.
not in here because it's going to be in a different section.
I'll make a note of that to be sure that I point that out when I get closer to it.
Do we give extra points for veterans that apply?
They get preference whenever when they're qualified for the job, but they do get preference. We have that, a statement for that, yes.
Point
And
system, right? Is that how do they get?
there's a section where they're able to notify us on the application whether they are a veteran or not, yes. Mhm.
But that's just, I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
So in the current code, well, in the current manual, my understanding is that there's a point process in the interview process.
There was.
Okay.
That's outdated language, yes.
Well, that's what's in the current manual.
Right.
Goes to 100. And in the current manual, the veteran gets 5 points for being a veteran. But in the new manual, you've removed the point system, and there is no point system assigned to the veteran.
It wasn't practiced long before I got here, so there hasn't been that system wasn't used long before I got here, so I kind of had to start with what I had. It hadn't been being used for quite some time.
Just for the council's benefit, the current manual says that there is a point system when people are interviewed. That's not being used. The current manual says that veterans get 5 points for being a veteran. Now the manual that's proposed just says they get a preference, but it doesn't say how it's calculated.
It's kind of hard to tell going back and forth between different versions, but I know somewhere in here I was reading it is actually spelling out, Vietnam veterans.
Right, right.
I mean, I don't know. I'm assuming this was written, the language
It's
was carried over a
old language,
while ago.
right,
Yeah.
right.
But
And again,
I need
some
to-
of those practices, just like some of the way we do payroll and all those things went away a long time ago. But again, that's why we're trying to get the manual current, because some things have gone way to the past that have made this, that's why it's so concerning to have it.
Just because it's not being used doesn't mean it's not something that we should keep in there.
I don't disagree with, if there's I mean, if there's thoughts on that, then obviously, that's why we're having a work session to, yeah.
My thought is it needs to stay, and it
How-
needs to be implemented.
How would you determine a preference
Yeah,
for a veteran?
we should clarify it.
If they're
What
full,
it
if two candidates by every other standard, as far as the interview process, had all the same qualifications, were equally qualified, then the veteran would get preference, is the general way that would go.
So you'd have to have two that were equally qualified, correct? And then the veteran will get,
So the new language says may be given preference.
Should be.
Doesn't say shall, it says may.
that shall and may thing comes up a lot.
Okay. Believe me, I'm aware of that.
And specifically, that's in 412E2.
Okay. Let's see.
In 413, there's an employment physical examination language. In the current manual, it has provision regarding substance abuse provision that's been removed.
Where's that?
13.
It's in 413 in this manual. In the current manual in 613, there's a section that deals with substance abuse, and it's been removed.
There's a whole chapter now on substance abuse, which is Chapter 9, that covers all of the pre-employment screening and all that.
The same thing with the veteran, that's because it's being addressed in a different
It's its own chapter.
later section.
Yep, Chapter 9. I think that, yeah, Chapter 9.
Section 416. I just don't know the answer to this, but it talks about sheriff's, appointments to the sheriff's office, which I would assume includes deputies. It says they're at-will employees who serve at the discretion of the sheriff. Is that correct under the collective bargaining agreement?
No, that means him himself. He's an elected official, and he's the only one that's appointed. I mean, he's elected, so there's nobody. Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
That section specifically only applies to appointed positions?
Yes, because the state's attorneys are, that would not be, the deputies, they're not under that. They would not be considered appointment that are at will. So I do need to clarify that.
I don't have any other questions in section 4.
Good?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to section.
Oh, Laura has one.
Oh,
I
Laura.
actually have a few.
Oh, okay. Let them fly.
Okay, going back to section 404, where it talks about the position description review. And that says that they should be submitted to the Director of Human Resources for approval. I think the position descriptions are part of the classification plan, and I think that's defined in Chapter 3. And per the charter, the classification plan has to be approved by the county council. So there seems to be some conflict there between the manual, proposed manual, Chapter 3, and the charter. If you go back to Chapter 3.
Right, it should read, review, any revisions to the position description shall be submitted to the Director of Human Resources for review. And so we need to marry that to the Chapter 3. You have it right in front of you. What is in Chapter 3? Amendments to the 304. So I need to marry that back to 304.
And 301 is what defines it, where it talks about the position descriptions.
Right, it should be for HR to review and then marry it back to 304. Okay.
And then in section 411, there appears to be, it's 411C. It talks about consensual romantic relationship partners. Does that include employees that are dating each other, or is this pretty much people that are not employees that are looking to be employees? Can you define what that would mean?
I'm sorry, where are we at?
It's relatives defined under 411C.
Let's see. That would be consensual romantic relationship partners.
What do you mean by that?
I guess I would need to get a,
You go into detail?
nope, not right here.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
under the nepotism chapter, so I'm thinking it would apply to employees that are currently dating. I just think that,
Would that be, would you prefer it to be said directly like that, or?
I'm just asking for clarification on what it means.
That, to me, is what that means.
Okay.
But that's just my definition of it. I don't know if I should,
I get what it means, but what does it apply to, I guess, is from my side of things. That's, when I was reading this earlier, I guess that's what I'm trying to get an understanding is, what does this mean? Okay, so you have someone whose brother is employee or someone's in a romantic relationship. What is that? What is then the process, or is that going to be spelled out there?
they shouldn't be directly supervising one another, signing off on each other's timesheets, things like that. There should be someone in the middle between those two individuals that is a third party to remove any direct supervision, performance appraisal evaluations, and things like that. There needs to be a buffer between the two where there's some checks and balances.
So they could work in the same department as long as they're not supervising each other.
Right. And you know, those things too need to be taken on a case-by-case basis as well. As far as approval, I think I have somewhere in it for approval from the Director of Administration to make sure that that checks and balances in place and there is that buffer in between.
And then going down to letter H of that same section, there's this waiver provision. Do we currently have that? Is this something new that's being added?
We do not have a waiver. I would put it in there as a suggestion that it would be good to have it on paper, but
So that is something new. Just,
If you have a waiver, doesn't that pretty much make the rest of the rules null and void? I mean, if somebody can just come along and say, okay, it's okay to do this for these two people, but then say there's another couple somewhere.
Right.
They don't get that same
right.
preferential treatment. I don't agree with the waiver. I think it
Okay.
needs to be,
I understand that. And I think,
the rest of the council says, but, at some point in time, there's,
understood. I think more with the waiver would be with stipulations, like I stated before, where there would be a buffer. I think before it was you can't work in the same department, you can't be under the same, back when it was first written, whereas the waiver would be a part of the process, but also making sure that there were checks and balances and there was a person in between, a buffer. So that probably should be clarified a little bit as far as, but
Who would decide the waiver? Would that be the director of that division?
the director, I would say, it would initially probably come from the director of the department. I don't have it spelled out that way at this point in time, but I can do that. The director of the department would make a suggestion if they have a good hire or somebody that's the perfect person for the position, but it creates that situation where they would request, could we do a waiver for this? And get a waiver, but then also put a buffer in place where there was another person in between and make sure that the department or the section was set up and organized in such a way where there would be a buffer and they wouldn't have direct supervision and direct, those other things that I listed.
Currently, it's currently written, it says that the Director of Human Resources makes the recommendation, and it has to be approved by the Director of Administration.
I could see, I'm kind of back and forth on that. I could see where the waiver could sometimes be beneficial, because there's a lot of people I'm thinking of in the county that are in relationships or married in the same.
A lot of people met that way and got married
Yeah,
and had
so-
families, so.
I guess my first thought is if a director says, you know what, I know him, I know her, or vice versa, I'm comfortable with it, I think they probably can make that decision.
Problem you get in is not with, the problem, I think, and we've had this problem in the past, not since you've been here that I've heard of, under your.
Not that I heard of either, but.
We had a big problem at one time. It's the unfairness that's seen from the other employees. It's not the unfairness between this person and somebody writing off. It's the other employees that are thinking somebody's getting preferential treatment because somebody's dating somebody, or they're living together, or they're married. And the county's big enough now, I think, with employees, what do we have, 800 employees?
Altogether 1,300, but total of 600 full-time benefited.
There's probably enough room in the county, and there's always enough, I don't want to say openings, I guess, for other employees that somebody can be shifted to another department.
But there's also checks and balances. They could contact HR and say, hey, look, I think there's being preferential treatment here. HR could look into it. I'm kind of back and forth on it.
Guess we can revisit it a little
You
bit.
need tightening up some,
Okay.
yeah, that's my opinion, but.
Okay. Well, I'll also, and I've done this over several topics, but I don't think I did with this one in particular, ask some of the other counties what their policies look like and see what's there, so.
Just while we're on that note, first of all, I generally don't believe government should be up in people's business. But as a whole, I guess we have had past situations where, or let me say this, let's say in the future, one day there's a county executive and they are dating someone in the department and then give them a promotion that they clearly didn't qualify for.
Sure.
Where's the check there?
Right.
For the top, the county does have an ability now to do censures or things like that.
Sure.
But maybe that would be, I don't know if it's better spelled out. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, the tough part for that particular scenario is that elected officials, for the most part, don't even fall under this manual. So it would be more of a higher level decision.
It says in D, for elected officials, the county will not consider for employment for any position applicants who are members of an immediate family of the county council or county executive unless prior review and confirmation of such employment has been obtained by the Ethics Commission of Wicomico County. Immediate family is defined as follows: spouse, children, parent, or employee, or spouse, or siblings. Maybe you should add consensual partner.
Okay,
I mean, it's,
sure.
Yeah, the language that's right above that, consensual romantic relationship partner.
Once I define what that is.
right, we got to work that one out.
I think most of the problems happen in the workplace, usually, not hiring outside of, hiring within.
Yeah, because if they're already working there and then there's a relationship, then you got a problem.
And part of it is that they have to self-disclose, so
Okay.
we rely on their honesty on that part, so.
Mrs. Hurley, you got anything else?
I just have a couple more. Okay, so section 414, I'm sorry, 414A3. It talks about contract positions, and they must be approved by the Director of Human Resources and the Director of Administration. Can you put that down for the executive branch on that, just for clarification?
For all of those, for grant-funded?
Well, I was looking specifically at the contract positions.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And then under 419, you reference the equal employment opportunity policy. And then I think 420, I just want to clarify that that is the actual plan. Is that correct?
That was yes, that was taken directly from, I didn't change anything on that really. That's basically the same exact thing that was before.
Okay.
And it referred to it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. That's all I have.
You got questions on section 4? Okay. Moving on to chapter 5, salary administration. Benson?
Under section 506, work periods, in the current version, it's law enforcement officers and corrections officers. Corrections officers has been removed from the proposal. Could you explain to the council why that's been removed?
The corrections schedule has changed, and it's, I might have to lean on Corey on that one as far as,
There was a resolution that took them out, it was how they're paid and everything, so it took them, there was a resolution a couple of years ago that took them out of how they were paid of their work schedule, because sheriff deputies sometimes work longer shifts, like our corrections are 8 hours. Some of the sheriff deputies, they're doing longer hours, and some of them are doing, our dispatch and stuff are doing,
The microphone. Otherwise, our recorder doesn't pick up.
Fort Houston, HR manager. So with the law enforcement, there's some of them that are doing longer shifts than correction officers. Some of the deputies, from my understanding, are doing, like, our correction officers have 3 different shifts. From my understanding, sheriff deputies, they're working sometimes 12 hours. Not all of them work 8. I'm not for sure yet.
10 hours a day.
Yeah.
10 hours nights, 8-hour midnights.
Yeah. So they're on different shifts than our correctional officers. But yeah, but there was a resolution that took them out of how the pay schedule is for their overtime and everything. So, yeah.
and I did do my best to go through every resolution since 2003 in legislative bill, but I can assure you I probably missed a few, so I guess we can look into. That was actually already rewritten when I picked up this and started taking it forward, so we can, if you feel like it needs to be spelled out, what corrections is. And corrections was very involved in, and very participatory in writing the manual, so.
When you say it was already rewritten, is this, a lot of this coming from the committee that worked on it previously?
Well, I'll be honest with you, in my office when I took over, there were probably 7 or 8 stacks of different versions that came over time. Some may have been written by the previous director on their own, and then some, I think, were from the committee, and I just did my best to try to take what I knew was being practiced currently, what law was, and tried to go from there, and what was already in place, and tried to do the best I could. And that's why I do need your help. I do need everybody's help from every department to make sure that we get it, because you guys have the historical knowledge of what resolutions and legislative bills have been passed. Those that have been here longer, law may have things that I don't have from the past, so that's kind of why we're here, kind of working on it together.
She was given the one of the committee with Sharon Morris and Matt Kramer.
Okay.
She was given that draft. She was also given a draft that Michelle Ennis, the prior HR director, had did with the committee. She was also given another draft that Jackie Curry and different lawyers did a draft of, and was trying to put it together to come before you guys. So she incorporated everything into trying to get what is current, what needs to be current, what's old, what needs to be taken out, and the new laws that have passed.
Very reminiscent of another document called a Water Sewer Master Plan. But thank you for crunching 15 years worth of, literally 15 years worth of documents into something that's relevant to today's environment.
Been the best. I know it's not perfect,
Mr.
but we'll
Benson,
get there.
Anything else?
There's a new section, direct deposit of paychecks in 05110. I assume that's the way most people do it
It's the
anymore.
nature of the beast now, yeah.
But it now, just so council is aware, this would make that, employees would be required, basically as a condition of employment, to do direct deposit. But there is a provision that allows them to opt out of it. And so you just make sure you're familiar with it, because do most employees
Yes,
not
absolutely.
want direct deposit?
They do. There have been a very few set of circumstances where that particular option is not available, and we make a special exception and try to work with the employee.
So you can still opt out of direct deposit?
Only for specific personnel situations. We try to work with them to get them situated and then help them get to the point of having bank accounts and whatnot. So,
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Hurley?
Last thing I have two more things, but 511, D,
D,
separation retirement. It says see chapter 17.
Yes.
But I don't know what chapter 17 is.
so Chapter 26 was the retirement plan in the old manual. It was recently updated and approved by council last year. And the number, nothing will change in the chapter. The only thing that will change is the number, and it will be Chapter 17 then, because once again, that was another topic where it bounced all over the book. So it's already actually was approved by council last year in its entirety. It just will be stuck there. Yeah.
It is currently chapter
26.
26. In the new manual, it'll be chapter 17.
Correct. And
I looked at chapter 17 and I'm like, I got it. The last thing I've got is just in 512, in the current version, at least what I saw written, you had a deduction for state employee credit union, and that's been removed. So employees will no longer be able to do a payroll deduction for state employee credit union.
that may have been an error on my part. I need to fix that. That's an error on my part.
So it's in,
Is that something
But
that,
that wouldn't be a deduction, that's like a bank account.
Right, it would be,
That's like-
I'm just saying I'm not advocating or not, I'm just saying in the current provision that I'm not going to be able to find while I'm sitting here, I'm sure. When you look at these, there were 7 before, which included state employee credit union as a deduction, and that's been removed and is no longer a permitted deduction.
I'm going to double, that might have been an error on my part, but there might have been a reason when I talked to payroll about it, as far as what used to be and how things used to work, and what types of things were taken out and what are not now, but I'll check on that.
Just for reference, it is current, what I understand to be current section 1112.
Right.
A4 is state employee credit union. That's not in the current one.
Okay.
I'm just asking so the council understands.
Sure.
If that question comes up, if an employee comes up and asks, why can't they do that anymore?
Sure.
You just need to understand.
Yeah.
You can't do it anymore.
And I think that was when city and county were together. City employees were in the state pension and stuff.
That may be what it
And then
was.
county had our defined pension. So we had collaboration with both. So when we cut ties of HR doing city and county, because we only had one HR department for city and county, and then when we cut ties, that's probably where it was, because, I mean, we separated 2 HR departments. years ago.
And they were state and we were not, and if you're a state employee, you usually go with CQ for your deductions and stuff, so that may be it. But I'll follow up with payroll on that, so.
Again, I don't care one way or the other, I just want counsel. After you adopt it and you start getting phone calls from somebody saying, why can't I do this anymore, if that's an
I'll get a phone call, I'm gonna refer them to you.
then you're not gonna get a good answer, because I'm not gonna know the answer.
Is that all you have, Mr. Benson?
It is.
All right. Ms. Hurley, you had a question?
I do. So in Chapter 5, you reference a schedule of classes. Is that the classification and pay plan?
Yes, that's how it was worded in the old, and that's what it is, and maybe that's the wording I need to use for it. I think I kept it as the same, so that to create the least amount of confusion as possible as we go through this
I
process.
think
But
just, you should be consistent with what the charter says, and I think the charter's they refer to it as the classification and pay plan. And so that's in a few places in Chapter 5.
Okay.
And then
Check charter.
in 505, maybe everyone else knows, but I wasn't sure. It says for compensation, employees will be pair based upon the following. What does the word pair mean in that context?
Paid. Just spelling.
Oh, so maybe it's just a typo, okay.
Yeah, typo, I think, maybe.
I paid on mine, maybe I corrected it on mine, didn't correct it on you guys. Maybe that-
Okay.
It says pair on
Probably-
mine.
yeah,
Okay.
It's probably just a typo.
Where are we at?
505
Oh,
line.
yep, that's me.
505 line.
It's a typo.
And then in section 509, and you've put this in bold, and I know that this has been a topic in the past where cost of living adjustments go into effect the first full paycheck in July. I know that the council office has received complaints from employees because our budget is effective July 1st. And if you wait until the very first full paycheck in July, it can be the middle of July before they actually start getting that increase. So perhaps you can explain to council as well as the employees that are listening what the thought process is behind that.
Call Pam. I was specifically asked to put it in there that way, not to throw her under the bus, but that was asked of me by finance to put it in that way. So I would have to get a direct answer from her on that for their reasoning.
I thought
Pam and finance.
years ago, if you got a raise on July 1, and let's say your paycheck falls on, I don't know, the 7th or whatever, in that check, you would get your raise for the days past July 1. Wasn't it like that? No?
Because some places, I mean, there are entities that do it that way, but this was a specific request from that department to put it in there that way.
I mean, I do think that the employees, if they get a pay raise July 1, that they should get credit from July 1 till whenever their next, that check is.
Yeah, it would just screw up a lot of the pay, because if it's in the middle of a pay week, because our pays start on Thursdays, goes to Wednesday, if it starts that following, there's 1 day left in it, or 2 days left in it, or the whole half of the week, and the people that are doing payroll, they're gonna have to put a whole nother line item in there for a different pay rate.
So instead of,
It starts, when it says first full pay, it's the beginning of a first new pay period in that month.
so would it be a problem? If that's a problem, can we say the last check prior to July 1, we're gonna put the raise in, so that they don't get,
Well, then that goes into your charter of your budget, wouldn't it? It's gonna coincide with each other. It's gonna run into your different budgets.
I can understand, it was an adjustment, we got those same phone calls, so it's certainly something, we can revisit with finance, because I do understand their point.
And I think it states it also in the charter about when the budget actually goes into effect, because I remember there's times that it starts, like, the annual increases have gone in on the 7th, the 11th, the 14th. It depends on the first pay period of July, because where we do the different pay periods.
So there's no way that, and you're right, it's a Pam question,
Yeah.
but I would ask Pam if she were here. There's no way to give an employee on July 1, if there's 5 days or 7 days in that, on that check, to give them that credit. I just can't.
More than happy to talk to her about it again. That world and the payroll world, especially just watching them this week with all the snow and everything, and end of year, I'm surprised they have any hair left in their head. It's a lot. So I probably will not address it this week, but we can certainly sit down and try to have a conversation again with it. And if I can, and feel free to reach out too if you have questions that, she may be able to answer, so.
These are good questions. I imagine we're going to go all the way through the personnel manual, and then at the end, we'll review everything.
Yes, yes. And in the end, once it's all said and done, and we've got it to where we all are in a good place, then it would go to law anyway to make sure that, because the law changes every day anyway, and I honestly would probably look into something in my budget at the end where I could get a real true employment attorney to look at the final product to make sure we haven't missed anything. So I might ask for a little bit of money to do that.
Shirley?
That's it.
You good? Okay, anybody else on chapter 5? No? All right. Let's go to
Mayor?
chapter 6.
Should we hold off on, just given the timing, I guess, the folks waiting here, should we,
I can shift 6 to another time.
or
if
could we
that
get
would
maybe
work.
an overview or something like that, or I was just trying to think of
Yeah, because 6 is looking like it's long.
yeah, it looks like it's long, and I see some folks that are nervously
I can
waiting.
shift,
I'm trying to-
I can pair up and marry 6 and 7 together, and, because 8 is going to be a big one.
Yeah.
So I could marry up 6 and 7 together, because 6 is longer and 7 is shorter, if,
Why don't we do that? Ms. Shirley, can we do that? Okay.
Do we need a vote on that or anything, or we
No,
good?
we're not.
Motion?
No? Good?
You do not need a motion.
No, it's a
It'll
work
just be
session.
scheduled as a work session, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I will send you an email, but I do have, not the whole world needs to know, but I have to have surgery on the 13th of February, so that won't work, but I will email you that.
I do have one final question. After we get through all this and
Sure.
everybody's in agreement on everything, what would be your recommendation on when we look at the personnel manual again, not 15 years from now?
I think it should be looked at least every 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Because once we get it to a good place, and if we stay on top of things throughout that time period and don't let it go too far out of hand, then it shouldn't be too hard to keep up with. But it's actually 21 years.
Is there something that can be added in the personnel manual saying we have to review it every 5 years?
Or
Just so.
some other manner, yeah.
We're not
yeah.
always going to be here,
Sure.
so maybe the whole staff might not even be here.
Sure.
So if there's something in there that could be like an automatic.
I think just the changes in our world would dictate at least every 5 years going through everything and
Well,
reviewing.
consider COVID alone.
I mean,
That
every
one.
every 6 months, just about, there's new laws that are being passed, between employment law to anything else, so it's,
We're not going to do this every 6 months.
I know. I don't want to either, believe me.
All right.
Thank you
all.
both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right,
Okay.
yeah.
We will move on to the EMS Task Force report. We've got Director of Administration Bunky Luffman, Director of Emergency Services Lorenzo Cropper. We might as well get JT, get you up here. Who else? Chief Frampton here? Is that you way in the back? We'll get you up here.
He's hiding.
it'll save us from calling you up later. That way you'll already be here. Okay. From left to right. Name
Your left or my left?
That's right.
mine.
That's right. John Tyler, Chief of Powellville Fire Company, also the President of the Wicomico Fire Chiefs Association.
Thank you.
Rob Frampton, Fire Chief, Salisbury Fire Department.
Lorenzo Cropper, Director of Emergency Services.
Monkey Luffman, Director of Administration.
All right, thank you all for coming. Thank you for all the hard work put into this. How long was it, Bunky? The year?
5 months, 6 months?
Several months.
But even before the actual meetings, it was discussed for,
I want to say 6 or 8.
so this has
Absolutely.
probably been a year-long process. Okay, who wants to start?
Well, so there are recommendations for the SWOT analysis, so I thought I would have Lorenzo sort of go through some of those, and what we'd really like is to, really hear, council feedback, because, obviously a lot of these things are not budget neutral, so I think this meeting's going to really help us as we start sitting down for budget in a few weeks to sort of make sure that we prioritize in the initial executive budget what the council would like us to prioritize,
Okay, they come out with 2 different recommendations, which I think that when they did a presentation, you should have. Yes, sir. They had an option A, which was 2 EMTs in each station with a chase unit concept. Recommended 3 county-operated paramedic chase vehicles and putting 2 EMTs in every station. That was option A. Option B is a 1-in-1 staff in each station.
1-in-1? What do you mean?
1 paramedic, 1 BLS provider in every station. They recommended some potential costs of doing each one of these, and I would be honest with you, they're very expensive. One of the other issues that you're going to have is we do have a shortage of paramedics. It's a nationwide shortage. It's nothing just unique to Wicomico County. There's a shortage of, nationwide. So that's a hot commodity in itself, or where these providers would come from. Based on these options, if you did the 1-in-1 staff, and they're estimating it's going to take approximately 100 ALS paramedics and 100 EMTs to do that. The other option, option A, you would have that same number of EMTs, but you would be doing it with approximately half of the paramedics, roughly 48, I believe is the number they come up with, thereabouts for paramedics.
Lorenzo, for clarity's sake, can you sort of define EMT, ALS, and BLS so everyone knows what?
Okay, I'm
You
sorry
asked
about
my
that.
question.
I'm sorry about that.
It's like we're in the military.
Okay.
Related people in the world.
EMT or BLS is one of the levels that the state of Maryland have adopted. Right now, it's approximately 265 hours of training. That's a basic life support. They do some medications, probably about 12 to 15 medications thereabouts. Do not hold me to that exact number. And then you have the advanced life support, which is the paramedic level, which is, Maryland has adopted the national level for that of 100%. And that is mostly roughly 2 years of schooling. And those individuals kind of bring the emergency room to you, is when we are putting it, doing all kinds of advanced life support skills, i.e. IO needles, pacing, intubation, all kinds of advanced life support skills. So they're bringing the ER to you.
Okay.
And the SWOT analysis is okay with either one of these options?
These were recommendations
Okay,
from out of the SWOT.
okay.
Just so the community is aware, why did we put this together?
What the fire chiefs asked to do the SWOT. Over the years, there have been numerous work groups put together, probably going back to the last 25, 30 years. And this is the first official one that was done in depth.
And this was focused on EMS, not fire. I think
Yes.
that's an important distinction to make, so.
I guess, reading the two, and I know Bunky, you made the comment that I want to see where the council is. I guess the big question in the room is, where's the county executive's office at with this? Which option would they be more apt to go with?
Well, the issue here is that it is a budget thing. It's also a personnel thing. So we don't want to spend a lot of time into trying to find, for instance, if we did the fire tower recommendation, which I know is more of a 6-year thing, and standing something up, but then come to council during budget time and you say no, so that's why we see merit in both. And Lorenzo can talk about the pros and the cons of both. So I think that potentially a chase system may be a bridge to the other system. I think initially first, assuming that we had the budget to do either, I think regardless of what we do, there aren't 200 medical professionals that I think are looking for a job in Wicomico County. I think the other two gentlemen at the table, may agree with me there. That's recruitment is going to be, I think, at least as big of a challenge as funding. If we had the funding, I think then our next hurdle would be recruitment.
So you're saying the executive doesn't have a position either way?
Well, she sees merit in both, but like I said, there's no reason for Lorenzo and our staff to go full bore for an option A or an option B if the council doesn't like it, or the fire, or frankly the fire chiefs. I mean, I've heard anecdotally that some fire chiefs are like, look, if the county hires these folks, I don't know that I want them working out of my firehouse, that sort of thing. And I'm not going to quote any one person or say that's even, a majority opinion, but we have to have buy-in from the fire chiefs. And honestly, I don't know that we have it on either of these options at this point.
I've said this from day one. Many people in this room have heard me say it. I believe you should stay in your field of practice. I got to work with many of the people in this room out on the street. I think we got one of the best fire departments in Wicomico County. Every one of them, I've worked with each one of them. As for me, I'm going to rely on what the chiefs tell me that they want. That's going to be my position. It was that before the SWAT, it was that during the SWAT, and it's going to be that today and after the SWAT. I think, again, I was a firefighter, but just for a short time. These guys do this job day in, day out. They're running departments. If they don't know, then nobody knows what to do. So I'm very interested to hear what the Chiefs Association has to say.
That's a good segue right to you. James, you got?
I mean, you can answer that question, but I was going to simply ask, okay, a lot of EMS work different stations, multiple stations in one
Correct.
county.
Correct.
I know one that works in one station and works in another station. Is this going to affect them if they want to work overtime? You know what I mean? If they want to work in one station and do another station, and is it going to cause them to have to do overtime, is what I'm saying?
So under the current system that we use, it will not, because my payroll in Powellville is totally separate from, say, Willards or Parsonsburg or anywhere else.
Right.
I do believe that there's probably provisions from the county that's going to limit how many hours they can work, how much overtime they can get. So I believe that's going to be detrimental.
Yeah, I was just asking the question because, I mean, I just know EMS that work more than one station, and it could impact them a little bit.
And I think conversations we need to have moving forward, we need to incentivize people like Sarah, my daughter. She's decided to switch over and go towards paramedic. We need to maybe give grants or help pay for education or whatever to help incentivize these kids that are getting out of school at 18, 19 years old and say, look, you want to go into this field? We can help pay for your college. I mean, we're going to have to do things like that. If you guys are saying we don't have paramedics, well, we need paramedics. So how do we get them? You got to pay them.
The city of Salisbury already does that. We have a $10,000 stipend for people to go to paramedic school because we had that same issue you're talking about.
There you go. I mean, that's great.
So how short a service are we right now, as far as, I've read this, and I've seen, you sent your letter in this morning stating your position. How short, what did you just say, Lorenzo, if we initiated this, what was recommended in option B, it was going to cost how many millions?
I didn't quote the millions, but it is substantial.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at, option B is the one-in-one staffing.
Right.
Okay, so you're looking at 11 stations, which is 44 paramedics right from the,
Yeah. So are we so short-staffed now that we need to go to that right away? Or is it something that we can work into over a period of time?
So
I understand both sides of the chase units, and I understand about the fire departments probably not wanting county employees, in their fire departments. I understand that. I also understand what you said about, overtime pay for the county. We probably have no idea. We don't have the crystal ball to show us what that's going to cost. So I guess in the immediate future, within the next, I guess you can say the next budget year, or where do we need to go to start alleviating the problem we have?
the biggest way to do that, and I want to start off as a precursor, that the Wicomico Fire Chiefs Association, we do have a position on this, and it is for the one-in-one option. And as far as going forward, we are looking for the funding of a one-in-one. Currently, we do not. We don't have enough funding to do that. And I think one thing that needs to be clarified is multiple chiefs, it's not about being against having county employees in the firehouse. Now, I'm not going to say that some don't have a feeling on that, but it's also, you have to realize that there are things with HIPAA. You know, there's all kinds of factors that play into that. They need their own workspace. Our fire departments are not set up for that. You know, they're just simply not. Most of us are in outdated firehouses that do not have enough space now to house all the equipment. You know, so it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm just wondering, where do we need to go within the next year or two to bring this up to a level of service that we need in the county?
So I think our budget committee, our stance is, and I believe I speak for all fire chiefs, is obviously, I know everybody is wanting an increase in funding. You know, but for us, it's to be able to put more staffing on. You know, I'll use my department. We only staff an EMT from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and that's Monday through Friday. Now, we do have a good volunteer EMS system in our department. However, we do have jobs. You know, there are other family obligations that are going to take away from that, and you know, there are multiple times on, I'll use the east side of the county, that there may be 3 EMS calls going on at one time, and they're all ALS. So, you know, sometimes our paramedic is shifting over, even though we share with Willards, they may be in Pittsville or Parsonsburg or wherever they're needed, because that's my stance is, as fire chief of my company, is we want, the community comes first. And I don't care where my paramedic has to go. If they are dispatched and requested, I want them to go.
Okay, so you have your, the fire association, they have, their stance is the one-in-one,
Correct.
right? The fire chiefs, they don't have a stance, or?
That is from the Fire
That
Chiefs
is the fire-
Association.
Okay,
That-
just making sure I'm on the same page.
Yep, and this was a unanimous decision
Okay.
by the fire chiefs. There were none opposed at the time we did this in August.
Okay, so, all right.
Mr. Hurley, I have a policy question. Could I ask another person to come up? Okay. Chief White? Yes, sir. I didn't see you all the way back there. That disproves the theory that when you sit in the back, you don't get called.
I learned all about it.
Yeah, if you can.
I do want to add, though, there are policy and sort of HR issues we would need to work with the fire chiefs on if we did have county employees. Like it's not that I don't think that a chief would say, I don't want a county employee just because of that. It's like, okay, if we have a county employee there, the chief is the chief. So that county employee doesn't work for the chief, but they kind of do. So there's sort of HR type issues, personnel issues, and we need to have written policy to allow the chief to run the area like they should, while also having a policy that allows, if we did it with a county employee, the county employee to do the job that they're being paid to do. So that would all need to be worked out.
Chief Frampton, do you guys have something similar to that? Like if you had a lieutenant or a captain that was not paid a volunteer, is he able to tell a firefighter what to do on a scene?
Yeah, so our rank structure does not differentiate between career and volunteer. So if we have a volunteer deputy chief that shows up, he can take over command from an assistant chief that may be a paid employee.
So you would be able to help with that, figuring out.
We also have, I will add in, that we have equal qualifications for both roles. I'm not saying I don't know what their requirements are to be an officer outside of Salisbury. So they have, in order to be a volunteer lieutenant, you have to have the same Fire Officer 1 college education is an option for that from volunteer and career, but all the other stuff, their training level is the same in order to be career or volunteer officer. So, and they do have the authority to tell an EMS unit with a paramedic on it that's an employee what to do.
That ties back into what Bunky was saying. The policy was set in the beginning. Are there any, this is probably a Lorenzo or Bunky question, are there any grant funds potentially available for this project?
Potentially, you could utilize SAFER grant for employees. I am not saying that that's a guarantee, but potentially.
And I don't think anybody in this room thinks we're going to be able to go out and find 50 or 100 paramedics in a day.
Yeah.
But I think we need to start moving towards, as far as getting paramedics, sign-on bonuses, whatever it takes to get people to say, hey, I'll go into that field if you're going to pay for my college. And I mean, I would support it if the executive puts it in the budget. I mean, I love the idea of what you just said, you know, $10,000.
Yeah, we also pay for college for all of our employees, if, you know, as long as it's fire service related. And like I said, we pay for them to go to paramedic school. We give them time off, permission granted, so we don't take that from their accruals or anything like that. We've been forced to do that, or else we wouldn't have employees.
I think most of us in here agree.
Yeah.
This is something we got to deal with.
This is a recommendation we made 3 or 4 years ago to the council and the executive to start a program like this. Get them into EMT at Warwick under their program, and then once they finish that EMT, roll them right over into the paramedic program in the county / fire companies, whatever, could come up with a grant program to help offset that cost or pay for that cost. We've recommended that numerous times through the council, through our budget committee meetings. So, and I think it's something we need to pursue. The numbers they're talking about as far as cost, though, as for the paramedic chase units or in-station, are not accurate, because it does not indicate the cost of what the chase units may cost, even if they lease them, or the equipment that's going to have to go on. You're looking at probably, just to put the life packs, the drug boxes, if you buy the Lucas devices and so forth, you're looking at over $100,000 just for one set of equipment. If you put 2 people on these chase units, 2 paramedics, they're going to have to duplicate those items.
Correct.
So even if you just have a chase unit that you lease, putting the equipment and outfitting it, the lights and so forth on it, is going to be another expense that's not indicated in this report at all. So
that begs the question, has there been any discussion on priority? Like if we were to put this plan in motion, where would we go first? Because it sounds like we're not going to be able to do the whole thing at once. No.
that's not what we were told.
No.
So I think one thing that needs to be considered in that is by going with a 1-in-1, you're not purchasing heart monitors or Lucas devices or ALS. We already have them. You know, that's not a cost to the county because we have already, every department represented already has at least 2 of everything, 1 on each unit. So it's not a startup cost for us. It's just a personnel cost.
And then
Well,
you
we got
have the
two.
maintenance fees on top of that. That are not indicated in this report, that currently we're absorbing those. I mean, we just signed a contract for our life pack units for 2 of them, and I forgot what it was now. I had the number, like 30 grand.
Yep.
Well, we got 2 recommendations before us, and you said it was unanimous amongst the chiefs. If we can't trust every chief in Wicomico County to give us the best decision for providing EMT and paramedic coverage, then we're shooting in the dark anyway. So, I mean, you guys got my support. I mean, that's.
I'm not saying we shouldn't build towards a countywide system, but right now, we need to have what we have, make it work and improve on it. We've been saying it for years. We've been putting a Band-Aid on a bleed, and it's just getting bigger. The numbers you can see have increased, and they're continuing to increase, the demand for service, so.
I have a question about insurance reimbursements. I know Chief Frampton, you and I have talked at one point, at one time a day, it was 60%. I think we're down to 40%?
32.
32, okay. So
That's
how
that's the
would
city of Salisbury for you.
That's, yeah.
For
We're about
Bunky
30.
and Lorenzo, how would the insurance reimbursements work? Would that money come back to the county or?
The county, that would be something the county would have to work out with those fire departments.
Okay.
Because if they're doing the transport, the actual unit belongs to the fire department. So
To the
they're,
fire department. So
yes.
they would get the money.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Now, I'm not saying that they could not work out an agreement to give some back to the county for the employees or something like that. In fact, Dorchester County, when they started their system, they worked out certain things with the volunteer fire departments to get some of that money back into the coffers of the county.
So Dorchester County has the Chase system?
They have a 1-in-1 system in most of their stations.
All of them.
Yeah.
Who's giving money back? I don't understand. You said,
When they initially started their system, the county employees rode the volunteer units.
okay, I'm sorry.
Now, those units have since been bought by the county
Okay.
as the years have progressed. But when they initially started, those county employees rode anywhere in the county stations. And
And they also currently lease the space to park the ambulances in those stations now.
yes.
Josh, you
I
have-
just guess where my head's at, of course, is, it'd be nice to be able to figure out, it's been a while since you've all first brought the report here that I've actually gone through it, but I think really trying to figure out where can we have savings or anything that we can do to double up on efforts. I mean, not to be the cold water on the conversation, obviously, but on Monday, we have a new president of the United States coming in who's been very clear the administration is going to cut. Tomorrow, we have a $2 billion deficit. $3 billion deficit, $2 billion in cuts that will be put forward in Maryland, state of Maryland. We're not exactly swimming in cash here, given our own financial constraints. We are likely going to lose our disparity grant. We still have a revenue cap. So how do we, and looking at this, the option of what was in the appendix, I guess if these numbers are still the same, this looks like the less expensive option, which is generally a good thing. But I guess if I was reading it right, 7.43 million is what it would be for an annual cost with 125% inclusion for benefits. So I guess, how do we get there? How do we phase in? I think that's more where mine. Are there ways that we can continue to save? Do we need a part 2 of any of this conversation to try to figure out where we can, how do we get from point A to point B? Because just looking at all the political, from the state to the federal government to locally, it doesn't matter what political party, no matter what, period, we are not going to be in great shape for money. It's not going to be flowing down. So how do we do this? How do we get there? I guess that's where my head's at.
My question about the fire chief's recommendation with the 1-in-1, is this a recommendation for county employees to be the 1-in-1, or is this a recommendation for funding so that the individual fire company would hire the 1-in-1 and they would be, what we traditionally have now for EMS for our EMTs?
It would be for one-in-one, basically, we receive appropriations now, more appropriations so that we can, hire within our departments. Because like I said, I think most of our biggest concern is the overtime constraints that county employees would have. Like, I mean, I'll use my job currently, I can work 48 hours continuous, 2 24-hour shifts. I don't think there's a department in the county, I wouldn't assume that has provisions like that unless, because everything's normally based on an 8-hour day.
I said this too in the SWAT meetings, and I've had conversations with a couple of you guys about it. I have a difficulty believing that you're going to keep employees if you don't provide them with benefits and retirement package and doing all that. And I said that in SWAT, and I asked a couple people, I think I asked Bunky, how can we give them a retirement or give them, because if not, I'll tell you, just like my daughter, I'm going to tell her when she gets through paramedic, you either want to go to Salisbury or cross the bridge or Ocean City, you got to go for your, the benefits, the retirement package. It means something when you're in your 40s or 50s. So it's great the way it is right now. It's working. But we've got to put together so that we can compete, no offense, Chief, with City of Salisbury. We don't want employees saying, hey, I'm going to go to the city. We want city employees coming to us.
No.
He and I had that conversation a couple of days ago.
It's the way it is. And your people are going to go where the money is and the benefits are. And if Pittsville, Willard, Sharptown, whoever doesn't have it, they're going to go to the city, or they're going to go to Ocean City, or they're going to cross the bridge.
Got it.
And at the end of the day, when that fire whistle blows and somebody's having chest pains, we don't have a choice. We've got to have somebody in that ambulance.
Not only figuring out the benefits part of it, we need to figure out how we can get the providers or clinicians or whatever they call the EMTs and the paramedics back. I mean, the numbers in there tell you how many EMTs and paramedics are in the county, but are they truly accurate? I mean, we've got 8 paramedics at Sharptown, but some of them are in their 50s and 60s now, and they've ridden since, back in the 70s or 80s, and they're tired.
What I'd like to see the Chiefs Association do is go to the executive and say, hey, would you put forth 10 paramedic positions in the budget, see if the council will approve it, and that's 10 for this year. Mm-hmm. Next year, put 10 in there again, and we start paying for these people's college and have agreements. That's just right. Like when I was hired at the sheriff's office, we put you through the police academy. You got to stay here 5 years. Mm-hmm. You go through for Powellville, you're here for 5 years. You're going to pay us the money back.
See, when we suggested this years ago, that's what we were hoping to get built or start, and that would be the beginning of a county-wide system. They would sign a contract with the county for 2 or 3, 4 years, whatever it may be, and then they would be placed as needed. Whether it was in Delmar or Fruitland or Allen or wherever.
Like I said, I'd fully support it. If she puts it in the budget, I'd support it.
Chief Frampton, just for definitely not for the people in this room, but for the people listening and watching on TV, where is the city of Salisbury at in regards to their call volume and outside the city, in the county, the calls that you respond to? Can you kind of lay those numbers out so the public's aware of kind of why we're all sitting here talking about all this?
Sure. A little bit. Obviously, we're just past the end of the year, so the call numbers are still kind of trickling in, but we've gotten some preliminary data just for the Salisbury Fire Department responded over 17,000 fire and EMS calls last year, which is probably, I don't want to speak wrong, but I would say it's probably more than all of the volunteer companies in Wicomico County added together. So obviously the bulk of the calls are in the Salisbury Fire District. The numbers that we show, and I know they come in a lot, we go outside of our district more than the outside units come in. Now, that's not saying Allen goes a ton to Somerset County and stuff, just keeping things within Wicomico County. Our call volume was up about a little over 4%, fire and EMS combined together, and I'd say that trend probably rings throughout the county. Lorenzo might have some numbers on that, I don't know. It's definitely not getting any slower, even though we have a fire marshal's office and we have our SWIFT mobile integrated health calls still go up, and without them, they would go up even more. It's not a Salisbury thing, it's not a Wicomico County thing, it's not a Maryland thing, it's a National Fire Service thing.
How are you on employees?
So we are fully staffed, but with that being said, our allocated positions are fully staffed. In my opinion, we need a 5th ambulance. We have 4 staffed ambulances. We could use a 5th ambulance tomorrow because there are times where outside units are coming in or our units are coming with the hospital being here responding when they're really not available. Again, comes into a budget thing, and then where do we get people from? We have an open hiring process for firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics. It never closes. I get maybe 5 applications in a quarter. So every 3 months, I'm getting 5 people to apply. That's terrible. You can argue pay. That's part of it, but that's not the answer. That works usually for about 3 or 6 months, and then they want something else. Because when we raise our pay, Ocean City's going to raise their pay, Powellville's going to raise their pay, Anne Arundel County's going to raise their pay, and they're doing just what you said, and it's a problem. So one of the things that Salisbury has that attracts people is the call volume. They're busy when they come here, the nature and types of calls that they're going to go on. Some of the protocols that we have that are above and beyond what the rest of the county has. So Salisbury is its own EMS operational program. So we operate independently of the county. We have our own protocols that we can do. We can stand things up. We have our own medical director outside of the county's medical director. So we are kind of unique in that aspect, and that does let us pull. We do have the LEOPS state retirement system that these guys don't have that. That's a major drawing card for us because of what you said. People come, and we have health insurance, and we have great health insurance. So I don't know if that totally answered your question or if there's anything else or more.
It does, just, kind of looking at the 30,000-foot view, we've got a population in the county that really hasn't changed over the past 5 to 10 years, and yet the call volume keeps creeping up. So, why is that? What are we going to do about it?
Called aging population.
Well, it's not, I don't think it's a question of what can we do about it. We have to do something. It's a public safety thing. Mm-hmm. It's not, we can't talk about that now. We got to do something else. We can't do that. So this is a very important conversation, both for the county and the city, and everybody's kind of got to put their heads together, and I thank you all for working on this SWOT analysis, and we're going to have some tough conversations. At the end of the day, money makes things work. That's the bottom line. And money, like Josh said, money's in short supply. So we got to be creative.
Sorry. Bunky, when do we need an answer for this from the council?
It's going to be in the budget. It's going to have to be.
Yeah, we'll be talking.
Well, I mean, from which option?
So,
Because it
well,
seems to me that they want, what, the first option?
Yeah, I would assume it was the 1-and-1.
Yeah, the 1-and-1.
Yeah.
Well, that would in the end be up to the county executive, what she submits to us.
Right, okay.
So.
All right.
I have a quick question, and I guess it's for Bunky because he helps with the budget. In talking with the dispensary, maybe the funds that, instead of putting it in the general fund, maybe some of that fund could be used for the fire departments. Dedicated to the fire department.
I think it's already dedicated. Isn't it already a?
No.
No,
General.
it goes in the general fund.
Yeah, they talked about it.
But I think that would save us from maybe
Yeah.
worrying
It's gonna be
about
the- it's gonna be the
something,
same
you know.
money. I mean, it either goes to the general fund or them. We get it in our budget,
Yeah.
in our fund now. So,
How would
So it should be, to me personally, I would agree that it would go to the fire department. You have an aging population, you have accidents. Now we got this big tall building, Ross building. You probably need equipment for that that tower power type building. So I really believe,
$4 if we hadn't have done that.
I really believe
We-
we should support the funding that comes from the dispensary to go toward the fire departments.
It would help.
What about the cannabis?
It would help.
That
I don't-
can't be
I don't know
used.
if
A lot of the cannabis money has strings on it where it
Yeah.
has to go to an impacted community, which is,
Well,
you know. So there are potential fire departments that would be in that zone that maybe,
Cypress Street.
you know,
So,
that maybe would be eligible.
But I still think we should use that money, because it's given to us every year.
for any one of you three, just so, again, not for anybody in this room, just so the public is aware of what kind of money this is involving, what is the average cost of an equipped ambulance and an equipped engine to go on the road? And
You would ask.
So I'll use as an engine, because we just received one, and we had a discounted price from when we started the process. Bare bones engine, at the time that we signed our contract, was $739,000. Newark Fire Company in Worcester County bought almost the same exact engine with less equipment. They didn't put an air cascade on it, and they paid $1.1 million. And it's an identical engine to what, so about $1 million is an average for an engine. That doesn't touch an aerial device. And I would say we're about about $450,000 for an ambulance, not stopped.
so, and what's the time on those? An engine, you're looking at 2 to 3 years, right?
36 to 48 months, so 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
We'll wait almost 4 years for our rescue truck. It's been ordered for 2 years. We've not had pre-engineering conference yet.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yep.
So just, again, everybody in this room knows all that information, but for the folks listening and understanding the complexity of this conversation, these are some of the things that you guys are dealing with. And, I mean, my hat's off to you, whether you're paid or volunteer. At the end of the day, you guys run into a burning building when other people are running out. So, thank you. Shane?
So, I mean, you guys got my number, but what I'd like to see, this is kind of what I'm envisioning. Every budget, submit the budget with X amount of dollars to pay for education to attract people, and X amount of dollars to start hiring employees. We can't hire 100 employees this July, but might do 10 more, and get to where we need to be. But we've got to start taking steps to get there, because we're falling behind. So,
Somebody brought up cannabis a few minutes ago, and we give away hundreds of thousands, I forget what the total was last meeting, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to different programs. Some of it was, what was the organization we gave to? Pardon me? Yeah, well, Habitat. It was good organizations, but the other one was, what was the other?
For life.
Yeah. The cannabis laws, when they were passed, no doubt, has affected call volume probably in different parts of this county, correct? I see heads shaking.
Correct.
You know, I don't know whether it would be advantageous for this council to contact our delegation and see if we can't get some of that money shifted to fire safety and EMS in Wicomico. It'd have to be something that go through Annapolis, because that's where all that originated at. But it just goes to show you sometimes where people put their thought process
State ain't giving
behind.
up that money. So the state ain't giving up that
Tyler,
money.
you had something?
No, I didn't say that. Well, the state gives it to us.
Yeah.
You know,
I
to
just
do what-
wanted to
you know,
add, I think.
It's just not going in the right places sometimes,
Joe.
you know.
Just for the public to understand, every fire chief is feeling this as well. When our ambulance runs out the door, we talk about aging population. There's a high volume of Medicaid and Medicare patients. There is a pre-decided payment from some of those, and that may be an ALS call that is a just say a $1,200 call, that you're going to recover less than $200 on. That, I mean, that's a reality of what we are dealing with. So the money from billing, it sounds enticing, but we don't see.
Hardly worth the stamp, huh?
Right. You can hardly start the engine up for that. Yeah. Does anybody, Mr. Benson, anybody have any more questions?
No.
I've got
Thank you.
I've got one more.
Joe, what do you got?
I know the question was option A was the chase units, right? Bunky, what's the involvement right now with the airport and the fire department we have out there? Is that just fire, or is that fire and EMS, or?
For fire, I don't believe we have any EMS on staff there, and they stay within the campus of the airport.
Yeah, and they can't leave the camp, they can't leave the airport.
I think,
The chief there is a paramedic. Bill Bounds is a paramedic. Some of his other staff are not advanced life support, but Bill himself is a
Do they
paramedic.
have equipment for that out there?
I am not for sure. I don't think they do.
They do not.
I know Parsonsburg's a responding
Yes.
department for there, so.
but I mean, if there was an accident, for instance, right on Airport Road and Parsonsburg wanted their help, they would,
Right.
we didn't have a flight in and weren't otherwise engaged, and what we have to do federally, they would help,
So if nobody has any more questions, my left to right, any final comments?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for this sit-down. The understanding, is critical. We don't always understand the decision process for the council and vice versa, so really appreciate it.
Again, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
None of us up here are firefighters, so we rely on expert advice from folks like you. Chief?
The only thing I would add is just for council's benefit and the public as well, this SWOT analysis was geared for the county. So please do not think that a one-on-one in each station apply. This did not look at the Salisbury Fire Departments. So that's a whole separate conversation.
Right.
I just don't want you to think that for $7.5 million, your fire and EMS problem is going to go.
Already thinking it.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Already thinking
I
it.
just wanted to make sure that that was known, and I know that the state said it when they came, but I just wanted to make sure that was reiterated. And other than that, thank you for your time. Thank you for inviting
And
me.
the reason we wanted you here is because what the county does affects what the city does.
Absolutely.
And vice versa. So
Yep.
that's why it's important to have everybody at the table. Lorenzo?
Appreciate the offer and the ability to come up and discuss it.
Well, always good to see you. Thank you for the work you and your team do. Last time I checked, you guys are open 24/7, 365, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, thank you for everything you guys do. Are you glad it stopped snowing?
It was a little exhausting.
Bunky, thank you for.
Oh, yeah, and thank all the firemen, first responders who showed up today. I mean, everyone knows the county executive's husband's situation. He had the heart attack, and them, along with Hal Chernoff and some of the boxers out at Main Street, literally, I believe saved his life. And that's just one example. It's high profile because she's an elected official, but I mean that happens literally every day in our county, and sort of doesn't make the news. There's no reporter on the fire beat, who's talking about what heroes these guys are and ladies on a day-to-day basis. And I wish there was. I wish there was a whole page dedicated to it every day in the daily news, because that's what they deserve. So you just can't say enough good things about what they do for us.
Heroes walk among us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you do.
Submit a press release.
That's right.
You have to submit a press release.
Think-
I said submit a press release, good news, and that's what you should do occasionally, give them an update of what you all have done.
Bunky took
I
the
worked
words.
at the newspaper, and I know that's what you have to do. They're not gonna come to you, but unless you murder somebody. But send a good news, like a quarterly report or something.
Shane?
Put it in the paper.
Bunky took the words out of my mouth. I wanted to thank all the firefighters that showed up, because it's important. When people come before us, we do look at the audience and see who's sitting there. And, you know, that makes a difference. It shows you guys, you're involved in this, you know. So thanks for coming.
All right. Well, if that's it, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Oh.